Hey guys, just want to do a quick sermon recap from Easter Sunday. And we talked about faith, and we used the passage from John 20 about Thomas, or doubting Thomas. And the premise of it is that faith comes to people at different speeds. Some people it comes quickly, some people it comes slowly. I use the analogy from N.T. Wright, where in his book Simply Christian, where he talks about how the gospel comes to some people like a blinding light, like Paul on the road to Damascus, and he's just blinded by it. Boom, he believes instantly. And then for others, it's like the sun coming up in the morning. It just it's a slow process, and you don't know when it's daytime. It just is. So I use that analogy, and then the last point was that the evidence demands a verdict, though, and I challenge people to dive into looking at the evidence. So we're going to start a series in 2 weeks called Life's Toughest, Hardest Questions, right? And Lee Strobel is coming. If you don't know who Lee Strobel is, he's a best-selling author. He wrote The Case for Christ, The Case for Faith. The movie The Case for Christ that's on Netflix right now is based on his story. And it's an incredible story. And here's a guy who is an atheist. He was the crime editor of the Chicago Sun-Times. Sorry, it's early while I'm recording this. He's a crime editor of the Chicago Sun-Times. And his wife became a Christian, and he set out to disprove Christianity, disprove who Jesus was, using kind of evidence and whatnot. And he studied expert witnesses. He traveled the country talking to these people. And in the end, he ended up becoming a believer because the evidence was overwhelming. So I encourage you guys to, as a growth group, begin this all church studies with us. It's going to be an awesome study. We're going to handle some of the toughest things out there. So in this study, though, this particular Bible study, I ask you to go to the book of Corinthians. And I give a question about what the Gnostics, and you may not know what that is, so I want to clue you in, and then I'll end this, okay? So here's the deal. In John 20, right after that passage on Thomas, John basically says in the next two verses, he says, and there are many other things Jesus did, so many we can't record them. The book of John is about 21 days of Jesus' life. That's it. It's very brief. It's different than the other three Gospels. And John is recording specific instances in the life of Jesus and the story of Jesus in Jesus' last days to really help us understand some things. And when the reason John put the Thomas story in there wasn't just to teach people about doubting and about proof and about evidence. There were a group of believers even back then that didn't believe that Jesus rose from the dead. They weren't really believers. They believed that Jesus spiritually rose from the dead. They didn't believe that they thought anything physical, right? Anything physical was evil. They were called Gnostics, okay? And the Christian fathers, John, all the apostles, spoke against this belief time and time again, that it was a physical Jesus, that this is a physical faith, that this is a real resurrection. So Paul addresses it, John addresses it, that they're all addressing it. And we have our own version of Gnosticism now, where we kind of, we over spiritualize everything, and we think that we forget we're not going to fly away to heaven. That in the end, in Revelation 21, when Jesus returns, it says that heaven comes to earth, heaven comes down. That's a powerful thought, that God is going to restore everything. He's not going to fly us away and destroy everything. It says that heaven comes down, and it's a renewed earth, a renewed heaven, a renewed earth together, and He'll be our God and we'll be our people. So hopefully that didn't confuse you, but you can understand that question I have in there about the Gnostics and the passage in Corinthians better too. So enjoy the study, enjoy each other, make sure you pray for each other. Don't forget Lee Strobel's in 2 weeks, and we'll kick off that series, Life's Toughest Questions. See ya.